Good afternoon, everyone. We find ourselves in a time in the Jewish calendar known as the Days of the Omer, when we count from Passover to Shavuos and prepare for the holiday of Shavuos when we receive the Torah from God. But it's also a time of Jewish national mourning. We know that the Days of the Omer are times of sadness because of a national tragedy that happened some 1,800 years ago. The story was that the great Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 students. He had amassed such a following, and they all died in a pandemic that broke out in 1 month. In 1 month, it took all their lives, which was an incredible tragedy when you think about it. But the Talmud asks, why did they deserve to die like this? Why? What they do wrong? And the words of the sages, it says that they tell us that Lo nahagu kavod zeh bazeh. They did not respect each other properly. Now that's a very difficult statement to understand. You're talking about 24,000 holy men, people of a higher stature, a high spiritual intuition. They're people of a different level. They're students of Rabbi Akiva. How is it that they fail to respect each other in the way they should? And the question is magnified when you appreciate who Rabbi Akiva was. Rabbi Akiva is the one that is recorded as having said that the mitzvah in the Torah, which by the way is in this week's Torah portion, Kedoshim, where the Torah tells us we should love our fellow as ourselves. Rabbi Akiva is the one that said that mitzvah is the cardinal rule of the Torah. That's the most important rule. Of course, they're all important, but this is the cardinal rule of the Torah. So how is it that his main teaching, that this mitzvah of love your fellow is the most important one, was missed went right over the heads of his 24,000 students who did not respect each other properly? And the answer is that you have to appreciate the nuances of the sages' words. What they say, they don't say that they didn't love each other. What they say is they lacked respect for each other. And love and respect sometimes are not the same, are not synonymous. They're not the same thing. In fact, sometimes because you love someone so much, you fail to respect that person in your desire and in your passion to share with them, for example, whether it's words of wisdom, and you have an idea that you think is brilliant, and because you love let's say your spouse or your friend, your colleague, you also want them, you're so passionate about them also understanding and seeing the light that you see, that you experience, that you know to be true. And sometimes because of that, we fail to allow that other person, for that other person, the respect that perhaps if they disagree with you, maybe their opinion is also valid, and maybe they also have something to say about the subject. It's not only as you understand it and appreciate it. So sometimes our love, because we're so excited about sharing with others what we know to be true, that we sometimes lack, that leads us to a lack of respect. So it's not enough to love. You also have to respect, and one should lead to the other. With the students of Rabbi Akiva, it didn't pan out that way. Their love for each other was extraordinary because they were the students of Rabbi Akiva and because they internalized his message. But they failed on an important issue, and that is respect, so that the other person's opinion on how they understood perhaps the lesson of their teacher Rabbi Akiva was also valid. They may have understood it different than you. That doesn't mean it's wrong. This is true in life in general. When you think about your own life, how many times we get into arguments with other people, and we're really passionate about our opinions, and because we're passionate, because we love others, we want them to. How could you not understand it? How could you not accept it? And we start imposing our ways of life, imposing our opinions, imposing our perceptions on others, and that's not correct. You have to allow another person, for that person, to respect that he or she too, they may understand it different, they may disagree with the way you understand things, but that's okay. This is true in politics, this is true in religious passion, this is true in many, many areas of life, and it's something to learn. and to adapt in our life that another person's opinion is just as valid as you. You may be right, that person may be wrong, maybe that person's right and you're wrong once in a while. It doesn't make a difference. That person has a right to his opinion, and you should respect that right. Sure, sometimes people can be wrong, sometimes you can be wrong, but if we can afford the respect for each other, we'll grow in our relationship with others. And eventually you will, if you are right in a certain particular case, you will end up penetrating that person and convincing that person of that perhaps they understand things wrong, or whatever it may be. It's not important. The point is that only with respect can you ever have a chance to influence another person. So love and respect are two components, they're two sides of the same coin. One without the other is just a half of the story, and sometimes that alone can bring the destruction of 24,000 people. It's just a few hours before Shabbos. It's already week number 8, I believe, or 7, where we have not been together in our synagogue, in our Shabbos meals. Yes, we're together with family, but that's it. So we pray that very soon we will be able to change and go back to the way it was. And it's encouraging as we see that the country is beginning to talk about reopening and going back slowly to a normal lifestyle. Hopefully that happens very quickly. But until then, adapt the message of this week's portion: love your fellow, but equally important, and in some cases even more important, is respect your fellow. But the respect should come because of love, and the love should lead to respect. I mentioned that this week's portion is Kedoshim. Kedoshim means to be holy. God enjoins us to be holy as He is holy. And when you think about the word holiness, holiness doesn't mean to run away in a cave and separate yourself from society and live like a hermit and and abstain and so on and so forth. Holiness just only means to be godly. Because God is holy, we are holy. Holy means to live life, to be here, but sanctify everything. I once told someone that, it's interesting that many people think the Torah is a very restrictive doctrine. I'm not allowed to do this, I can't do that. But when you really think about it, it's not really true. I once told someone, there's not one human pleasure that the Torah takes away from us. Not one. Whether it's food, whether it's intimacy, any kind of pleasure you can think of, the pleasure of going on vacation, the pleasure of eating, nothing is taken away. There's not one such pleasure that Torah says you can't have. What the Torah says is you can have every one of them, but I want you to do it in a sanctified way. Sure, enjoy food, but let me share with you what kind of food you should eat and how you should eat it, because not every food is best for you. Kosher food is good for you. Non-kosher food you should stay away from. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take pleasure in food. It means you should sanctify that pleasure. The same thing with marriage, intimacy. Sure, you can have the pleasure of intimacy, but you have to have it in a sanctified way. The Torah tells us with whom, how, and so on and so forth. And the same thing with every other thing. So Kedoshim Tihiyu, be holy, means sanctify the very physical world we live in. It does not mean to separate yourself from the physical world. Embrace it, take it on, be part of the world, but sanctify it. And if we do that, we will become godly. And when we are godly, the sky is the limit. Have a good Shabbos, and thank you very much. And hopefully by next Shabbos, perhaps, we can all be together again, or whenever that day is. Until then, all the best, and Shabbat Shalom.